In this video, I'll show you how to use a gimbal to film cars for super smooth cinematic results. So here's the deal. Filming cars with a gimbal isn't as easy as it seems. You're juggling movement, reflections, and the tricky task of keeping your footage steady and interesting. First, let's talk about settings and equipment. Making sure that your gimbal is properly balanced is key. My go-to gimbal is a Zhiyun Weebill S, but all the tips will apply to any 3-axis gimbal. My main camera is a Fuji X-T4 and I set it at 60 frames per second, which allows for slow motion in post-production. Occasionally I film at 120 frames per second, but not too often. I keep the resolution at 4K, which I later scale down to 1080p. The next thing to think about is where you want to set up your scene. Make sure that the area is well lit and gives you space to move around. So I always try to park the car in a distraction-free area like an empty parking lot or a quiet field where there's no traffic. Use your surroundings to your advantage. Trees, buildings, or cool road textures can creatively frame your shots. When I film a car, I like to get it from every angle to give a complete view. I do this efficiently by splitting the car into 6 sections. That way, I make sure to capture all the important features for video ads so nothing gets missed during editing. I mostly always shoot in landscape mode, keeping the framing in mind for future vertical edits. To do this, I use a 9-grid overlay on my monitor, which helps me frame the shot correctly. In each quadrant, I'll grab 2 to 3 gimbal moves in both directions. I'll start off with wide shots, then zoom in on close-ups, highlighting key features like the headlights, badge, and tires as focal points. The first movement is the push-pull. As the name suggests, it's all about moving towards or away from the subject while keeping it in focus. I usually do both movements in separate shots, from a low angle or with a slight tilt down. And to stay precise, I make sure that I have autofocus to lock on to a specific point. Depending on what I need, I might lock the gimbal settings or set it to FPV mode. Next up is the parallax, also known as the orbit. On your gimbal, use the follow mode by holding the trigger to keep the focal point centered while keeping the point of interest in the center of the frame. This will help with better stabilization for lock-on stabilization effects in post-production. The result is a really smooth dynamic shot that brings a lot of depth and dimension to the video. Now here's a quick tip. Incorporate in-camera transitions for smoother edits. So a quick pan to the left or right following a camera move can significantly enhance the flow. Next up is the crane. This technique involves moving the camera from the ground to the air and back, simulating the motion of a camera jib, a camera tool featuring a long boom arm. Start by bending your knees and getting low, then smoothly rise as high as you need to. For a more dynamic crane shot, try tilting the camera down as you rise, or up if moving the other way. For the interior, I do roughly the same thing, where I'll start with a push-pull, starting with the driver's side. Then I'll use a parallax move to zero in on focal points like the steering wheel, badges, screens, upholstery, and other areas of the trim. After grabbing all of my must-have shots, I'll start playing around with some creative shots like the POV robot. To do this, switch your gimbal to FPV mode and pick 2 or 3 focal points like the front badge, grille, and headlights. Pause at each one before moving on. You'll then use speed ramping in post-production, speeding up during the transitions and slowing down at the key points. And that's what gives it this really cool robotic effect. I usually finish with a final shot that smoothly transitions into the car's interior, which makes for a really cool effect. Next up is the Vortex, a shot that I really love. It's really dynamic and engaging and adds a lot of energy to your video. When you switch to this mode, the camera spins on its axis, creating a cool spiral effect, kind of like a barrel roll. To get into Vortex mode, just hit the trigger 3 times. What I do is I'll hold the gimbal vertically and then slowly rotate it back to level as I move backwards. This will take a bit of practice, but once you get it down, it is seriously impressive. The key to all of this is creativity and practice. Really, you have to do this shot over and over again before you get something that you're going to be satisfied with. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash that like button and hit the subscribe button to be the first to receive real-life run-and-gun video advice. My name is Andrew Cooper at realvideocreator.com. I'll see you next time. Take care.